Hey there, friends. You're listening to the third season of Rev'ing Up. We are intern ministers at the Community Church of New York. And on this show, we talk about the path of ministerial formation, Unitarian Universalist style.
On this season, inspired by the Riddle and Mystery curriculum written by Richard S. Kimball, we're exploring life's big questions.
Where do we come from?
What are we?
Where are we going?
Let's talk about it. Welcome to the journey.
I'm Meagan Henry.
And I'm Carrie McAvoy. And we're
Rev'ing Up. Hey there. Welcome to the fourth episode of season 3 of Rev'ing Up. This is the third episode in which we are going to answer a randomly chosen question, which will be addressing our theme this season, which is, who are we? What are we? Where are we going? Something like that. Carrie and I are really interested in engaging with you all, our viewers and listeners, around these questions. So we invite you to reach out to us. You can engage with us in our Facebook community, which is found on Facebook, called Rev'ing Up, REV''ing up. And also feel free to send us an email. You can reach out to us at podcast@ccny.org. This is a podcast production of the Community Church of New York. So that's what the CCNY is. And we look forward to hearing from you. How are you doing today, Carrie?
I'm doing well. Really excited to find out what our question is for today.
Yeah, me too. It is this random generator, this random thing that chooses the question. So none of us know what it's going to be until Amy, speaking as the voice of God, comes in and tells us what our question is. So so excited. So I think maybe we just go for it. Let's just do it. Let's hit go on the question generator.
All right, that's one of the big questions of Unitarian Universalism is, could a podcast producer be an expression of the Spirit of God?
Who isn't the expression of the Spirit of God?
All right, well, I feel a divine presence in this random number generator today. So let's see what it has for us. Okay, so the question of the day, this is a really good one, and I'm really excited to hear your answers, Carrie and Meagan. Is life fair?
Is life fair? This is a good one.
It is a good question.
So we're going to answer this question from the perspective of, as intern ministers who are, someday going to be fully fellowshipped ordained ministers, and who receive this kind of a question from a congregant. And then we will segue into answering how we answer this question for ourselves. Is life fair? Carrie, is life fair?
Well, there's the questions I would ask after that, like, why do you ask? What do you think? And going from there.
Is there any way that you would be willing to rethink and rephrase the question, what do you think? What do you think? I'm just putting it out there to push back on it a little bit, because I kind of hate that question, because it feels like an evasion of the question. It's like, well, I don't, so I think I guess I'm just reacting to that because I know that that's what you adults often say to you children. And I remember as a you child getting that and just being like, well, I'm asking you what you think. So in this case, being asked this question from a congregant as a minister, I would probably need to kind of evaluate really quickly what is appropriate within my boundaries as clergy in terms of what I might share of myself with this person. And understanding the context from which that question is coming, of course, is always going to be so important. So like, yeah, what's going on with you that this question is coming up right now? Because, if usually something really bad has happened to somebody if they're asking that question, I think, like, is life fair? Or, how do we determine what does that mean? What is fair? I think probably like, why do bad things happen? It is kind of what I feel like where this might be coming from. But what do you think, Carrie? Do you think that's making, I don't know. Oh, well, first of all, how do you react to my pushback of your question?
No, I think it's a great pushback. And I was going back to why I would ask that kind of question. And so my questions are, why do you ask? And that's trying to understand whether something happened to them, in which case there would be a pastoral response that I would want to make to that. And also, what do you think is trying to have them think about what their spiritual framework is. So I'm not just starting off by what my spiritual framework is. So there are, and this would be a good exercise to find what are some other questions we could ask to get at that underlying theological basis that they're operating from. And I'm going to bring in context again. I would probably answer this differently to a 6-year-old than a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
So, and whether I knew them or not. So if it's someone in the hospital, for instance, that I don't know anything about, I would want to first try to figure out what framework they're coming from.
Yeah. And I think I would affirm the question, like that's a really big and important question. And I'm glad that you asked. And I'm, I have my own thoughts about whether or not life is fair. And I'm just curious to know what like, where is this coming from? What is your, like, what's pulling you to ask that question? And the idea that I put forth just a minute ago that, something bad has happened and that's why the person is asking can also be expanded. That might not be the only reason, right? So as our producer is very pointing out in a really thoughtful and I think sensitive way, for many Unitarian Universalists of whom I have known and worked with in congregations, there's a range of privilege and stability, economic access and resources, family resources, and many times folks who have things pretty well provided in their lives will notice that others don't and wonder, why is this? What's fair about this? How did I, end up here where I am and other people are suffering? It's just like, oh, I got lucky that I got born into a family in the United States, much less like I got lucky and got born in a family in the United States and white, right, with like all of the privileges that come in our society with that identity. So for some of our congregants, this can be a really hard thing to reckon with. And there's a lot of liberal privileged guilt out there. So this question could be coming from, wildly different places. Yes, and it's good to acknowledge that and really like try to understand where is this question coming from, for sure.
Right.
So my answer is, I don't think that it works that way. That life is either fair or unfair. Like, just I don't think that's how things work. And so no, I don't think that life is fair. I don't think it's inherently unfair either. So what does that mean then? You know, what that means for me is that I have a responsibility to be the best person that I can be to create a more just world and community that I can.
Mhm.
Because I have the opportunity to be a kind person in the world. You know, it could be from saying thank you and being kind to someone who is checking out my groceries, who's clearly having a bad day, right? To working in a social justice organization, to, you know, going into a caring profession such as, you know, social work, teaching, medical, nursing, minister, you know, because I think that we make the world what it is. So when I see things that are unfair, I don't just say, well, that's just life. But I try to do something if I can to make a positive impact in those areas where I can see that there's injustice.
Right. Not so I would tend to agree with your answer that the world is not fair. Fairness doesn't come into play. However, we as human beings with agency can make things less fair. And we're infused with this concept of fairness. And if we're paying attention, we will soon find things that indicate that perhaps fairness isn't what's on nature's mind. Like I think about baby turtles. So some of them don't make it. That's not fair. Sorry for all of the turtle lovers out there, but you know, there's something really, if you take humans out of the picture, there's some really unfair things that happen in the world. And then you add humans on top of it, where we as humans have a capacity to make things a lot more unfair. But we also have the ability to try to make things more fair. So the things that happen to me as a person, being in a white body, being in born in America, you know, all of the privilege that I have a responsibility, like you said, Meagan, to try to work towards a more fair world.
You know, I think about when kids are fighting over a toy and one of them has been using it for longer than the allotted time to be sharing, and the other one is like, that's not fair, you know. And I think it's a really great opportunity to talk about and teach, you know, what do you mean by fairness? Do you mean equality? Do you mean that everybody is starting from the same starting point and then we're going to fight for it to get to the end? Because that doesn't really feel fair either, because there's no equality. There's no starting from the same place. There's no leveling of the playing field.
Right.
Not really, because people are all different, have different needs, have different abilities, have different, everything. It just is a ridiculous notion. And yet we do teach it to our children. Mm-hmm. So that is something that I definitely want to think more about when, like, what are we teaching? Mm-hmm. And who is we? When I say, what are we teaching? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And who gets to decide what is fair and what is not fair, right? So whoever is deciding that has so much power in that situation, and maybe that's not fair.
It's not. No. And then also, what is just? Is justice the same as fairness?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And equality versus equity. And, I have noticed that children understand fairness pretty early. Like that's something that's maybe pretty hardwired in us. But where do we transcend our what is fair to us versus what is fair for everybody?
Right. Because kids are pretty self-centered. Like, let's be real. That's just, we have to teach them not to be that way. That's our job. One of our jobs, but they do have a sense of justice and fairness, and they will think about others, and they will have compassion for others. And that is something that they learn, and it's something they learn through modeling. And it is something that I can see sometimes that they actually just like feel it very deeply inside of them. So yeah, that's a whole gets into a real can of worms there. But I wanted to get back to this concept of justice, because I think that I noticed that there's been an extensive conversation around what does justice mean, right? So like when the men who killed Ahmaud Arbery were convicted and sentenced. And so there is this question of like, when we use a word like justice in regards to that situation, I noticed that came up pretty quickly. And there was, when people would say, justice has been served, which used to be a thing that we would say all the time, right? Justice has been served. The person who did this horrible thing is being punished for it. And there's a deeper question, which is that, well, that the justice in this situation would have been that young man had never been murdered in the first place, never been murdered for the color of his skin in the first place, because of this white supremacy embedded in these humans who saw a brown person and automatically decided that, oh, they must be doing something wrong and we need to catch them. And it's, yeah. So justice, what is fair, is on the surface level can be kind of a simple question, just to think like, well, what's fair? But it's a really deep, deep question, and something I think I certainly will grapple with for the rest of my life, because it changes depending on the situation.
Right. Going back to the question of why do we think that putting someone in a small cell is just?
Right.
So, yeah, so I think maybe an important question to follow up with the question, is life fair, is if it's not, what does that mean for how we should act?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can all agree, all humans agree, that there are things that happen that are not fair, regardless of whether we think that the universe is fair or not. There are things that happen to us and to others that are not fair.
Right.
So then what? I mean, for myself, there is like when I'm a child and someone's using a toy that I want to be using, I can say that's not fair and go grab it back. Or I can put my own desires aside and say, I've been playing with it for 20 minutes, so I'll let my little sister play with it for 20 minutes. And so I learned to self-regulate and discern what my desires are against the experience of another person. So on that interpersonal level, those are lessons that I learned pretty early, having 4 brothers and sisters. So that's one aspect of it, but then there's societal aspect of it. So as a white person, as a middle class person, what responsibilities, coming back to responsibility, do I have to react when I see something that's not fair?
Right. Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is a great question. I love that we're doing this exercise in, as an intern minister, thinking about the kinds of questions that people will ask us and how to respond to them, and just kind of doing this exercise of thinking through things, because there's a lot, there are so many levels, and yeah, we just got into so many things just from that one question, right? And there's so much more to explore, even. We just kind of barely touched the surface. Well, I hope that folks out there listening and watching are having thoughts pop up for you. And, I'm sure there's something that I said that left something out, right? Like, I'm sure there are things that both Carrie and I did leave out or didn't cover, or you are thinking, that could go a lot deeper. I would like to go a little deeper on that. We would love to engage in that conversation, so please do feel free to reach out to us. You can write to us at podcast@ccny.org, and you can also just put a little post on our Facebook group on Revving Up. And we'll have a link to the curriculum that we got these questions from. That's a really cool Tapestry of Faith, Unitarian Universalist online curriculum that's available for free for anyone to use and explore. It's called Riddle and Mystery, and we hope that you'll check it out.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We're so glad that you're part of our community.
See you soon.